And we're on, I think.
We're in.
We're in. It's working. We're gonna have to do something about the way we run our podcast because we're spending more time on the on ramp than we are on tape.
That
And
was a
it's
good on
gonna
ramp.
it was a good on ramp, but I feel like today's episode will be shorter because both of us have lives to live outside of this. And
This episode is brought to you by um, Chids and Clough, the lives we live, and the stuff that we do besides professional reflective practice.
now this is the perfect time for the Skype music.
I
Do
know you
do
can't.
do do do
Yeah,
do
that's the thing.
do.
You can't put bumpers on this unless
You know
we're
what?
playing it.
I think maybe the next time you call me, I'll just
Yeah.
record it on my cell phone because I love it.
Oh,
I love the sound. If anybody's not familiar with the Skype telephone ring, it's awesome. I was telling Chris this morning when he called me, it's like I don't answer right away. I like let it ring for 30 seconds so I can listen to the music. And I'm like,
yep.
"Hey buddy." So now he knows when he calls me, it's like he could call me and walk away. I'm just not going to
It just
answer because I want to hear it.
yeah. It has just the right mix of kind of um,
Like it's upbeat, it's got this cool techno to it.
it reminds me a little bit of the
Reminds me of a video game.
video game. Yeah, I was gonna go there. Like it's like a cross between 8-bit video game, carnival music, because it has that weird kind of like water dropping sound, like the boop boop, right?
Yeah.
Um, and also the Apple Watch. Funny enough, so the Apple Watch when it's in kind of landscape mode, like if you're using it as your alarm, so you turn it on its side with the crown facing up. So that's kind of like your snooze button. It's on the top. And
Hmm.
when you do it like that, the alarm for the Apple Watch is similarly soft and pleasant. That's as best as I can sort of say it. Like it has that the sound of it is it's a good alarm.
Cool. Um, I really don't want to talk about our week again, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's part of Decoded podcast is that we break things down, we build things up. So,
Unless we
be-
don't. I mean, we can go.
well,
That's the other thing. The other part of it is that it's ours and we can do whatever the hell we want.
um,
Unless you got a thing that you want to drop into.
hey, we survived the first week of school. Let's talk a little. I would love to talk a little bit about the elementary versus the secondary perspective. And I know maybe you can give us a flavor for. I know your week was a little bit different because of the type of class you teach. Like you don't teach a traditional grade 11 English class.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be kind of neat to hear what a startup looks like in the type of classroom that you run.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's elementary grade 3, your typical, uh, everybody gathers in the schoolyard the first morning. Then when the bell rings, everybody is, asked to assemble in the gym where we sing "O Canada," we say prayer because we're a Catholic school, and then teachers start calling out their lists. Now, I really hate that part. I hate the calling out the list. So what I do outside is kids, they inevitably run up to you and say, "Am I in your class? Am I in your class?" And I'm like, "What's your name?" And they tell you the name. And what I do, what I've been doing is I'll say, "Yeah, yeah, you're in my class. So what I want you to do is stick close to me as I kind of tour around and meet new people. And as more kids come up and ask, am I in your class? I start to herd them. Yeah, you're in my class. Stick with us. Walk behind me. Sit in the gym. I'm literally looking for, 4 or 5 kids out of 20. And what happens is their friends will say, "Oh, Joe, come here. Mr. C says you're in our class." So I don't really have to stand up and say my class list. I just look around and say, I count, I make sure everybody's there, and I'm like, let's go. Follow me up the stairs kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it. I don't like it. It's not a good feeling. Also, my school's made up of a lot of newcomers. And so their names are never what I find that I do is I look at the name and I say it, I pronounce it in a typical English fashion, but it's never it's never that way. There's always a twist to it that comes from the place or the culture that they belong to. I'll give you an example. Let's say one of my kids' last name is spelled Haille. To any normal person, they might call that Hale, but it's Hale, Hale. Like there's a there's practice that has to go with that. But it's just interesting, right? Because you'll be like, Hale, Joseph Hale. And then the kid's like, it's not Hale, it's Hale, right? So that's interesting in the place I work. And the first thing I do when we get up to the classroom, I say to the kids, you're gonna have to teach me how to say your name, because I know me. This is that self-awareness thing you and I were talking about before. I know me. I need to practice it. I'm gonna mess it up. So I'm not messing it up because I'm a jerk. I'm messing it up because my brain needs practice to pick it up and say it the right way. Last year, it took me like a good month to say 3 or 4 of the different last names. They were so long and had these really cool ups and downs in them that I couldn't do it the first 3 times. So I told the kids, I'm not being mean. I'm learning. It's going to take me a little bit. So bear with me. And then, as a class, we talk about, hey, Mr. C is going to be doing this. So when you hear it for the 10th time wrong, I really don't need you to laugh, because your laughter is going to upset the student whose last name I'm trying to pronounce. And after a while, it's going to get annoying because I'm working here. I'm not messing around. I'm working hard, and you're laughing because you think it's funny. So we do have that talk almost immediately in my class. So anyway, my first week was great in terms of like issues and stuff. My class seemed like a really good bunch of kids, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know them. But as I was telling you on the on-ramp, I really dislike this part of the school year because it's just everywhere I turn is a teaching moment for these kids in how to operate in the room that we work in. And, before we can get to the good stuff, like before we can get to kids automatically knowing what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, the norms of our classroom and the expectations, there's a lot of, hey, can you tell me what you're doing over there right now? I'm not sure what's going on. And then I was telling you, there needs to be some compliance in my classroom. So if you're hearing this and you're a teacher that doesn't believe that there needs to be any compliance in a classroom, I'd love to have a chat with you about how you run your classroom and how you build your culture without any compliance. For me, there needs to be compliance for a couple of reasons. One of them is safety. I need kids to do certain things a certain way so that people don't get hurt. And then another thing is that as we're getting to know each other and we're building trust, I need them to do certain things in a certain way, just like they probably need me to do certain things in a certain way, right? I need to comply as well. It's not just a one-sided affair. It goes both ways. And so you and I were talking a little bit about that, and I don't want to get into it too much, except for the fact that this week I needed some compliance at certain times for certain things. And I strongly feel that in November, I'm going to feel really good about my crew and how we're rolling. But right now I've got this uneasy feeling. Just the return to school is weird. I guess it's one of the drawbacks of having 2 months away from work is when you come back, you don't just jump back into work. You jump into a brand new situation where you're starting from scratch, which I've never really considered before. So the start of the school year for an elementary teacher is starting from scratch. It's not just if you work in an office, you leave for a month and you come back and all your paperwork's still there and you just jump back in and you can deal with all your clients and your coworkers. This is different. They drop you in with 20 new people that you're supposed to build a relationship with and teach and help them grow as you grow at the same time. So very interesting, very interesting. I'm happy it's over, that it's done with. It's nice to come to the first weekend. There's a little bit of rest, a little bit of reflection, and then we started up again on Monday. So that's my end. I'd love to hear what happened on your end.
I like you got me thinking about the different approaches just in general. So that's almost like a maybe it's a philosophical kind of stand, as in, what's your baseline approach to classroom building? I actually tweeted out just while we were chatting before, just asking people curious about, what sort of things still work versus things that you find are just like losing their luster in your classroom building toolkit. So maybe I'll get some traction on that, and people will share some ideas. But it has me thinking about the difference, or let's say the balance between compliance and community building, or the relationship between compliance and community building. Because, as teachers, we come back, there's a whole lot of compliance training. And I guess I'm sometimes aware of the community building moments. I don't know if I've given it any long game consideration, though, about what that first week as a teacher coming back into the school, what I'm expecting. I can remember reading something there was some feed in the tail end of August where someone was asking about whether or not teachers appreciated, I guess educators, but I guess it's teachers. So you would have to be in a school, whether or not they appreciated having kind of like a rah keynote speaker there for them when they return to school. And it's funny because I think I can't find the thread now, but I'm pretty sure there was a high number of people that said no. I want to get my work done. When I come back in, I want to sort of get to work. I want to sort of have everything kind of like helping me to set up for the big show, which is the students actually arriving in the building. And I need all those moments to sort of get my head on straight. So what you were saying about your experience in the classroom has me connected with what has been my experience as the teacher coming back, and then thinking about what are the community building pieces that, because I go more on the practical side as well. There's some tactical and strategic things that I have to get in place. Inventories to be checked. And how do I perceive the community building elements for that? So I was in the week before school started. And I started to sort of reset my classroom because a lot of the stuff had been packed up, locked up, kind of put aside. Space had been left so that the floors could be waxed, stuff could be cleaned over the summer. So even I spent a lot of time just kind of getting everything out that I needed to start to build my system from where I left off in June. So that took a day, that took almost 2 days to kind of get stuff out and get it out in front of me. I'm a visual inventory guy. So I needed to see all the pieces again to sort of reacquaint myself with them and sort of reconnect with their purpose. And then once I had them out, then I said, okay, now I can start to think about where they were against where I would like them to be. So that took me about 2 days. And then, so I did 5 days. So the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The second 2 days was then sort of spent kind of throwing out, fixing a few things, kind of adjusting and tightening. And then sometime between the fourth and the fifth day, I started to build some new resources. And so the two programs that I'm involved with this year, so I'm 60% of the time in a autism community class focused on culinary and life skills. And then the other 40% is with grade 9 learning strategies. So I'm working with the new grade 9s coming into high school in the learning strategies classroom that is away from it's on the other side of the school. So it's a different space. Our community classrooms are all clustered in one spot in the school. And then last period of the day, I go down the hall to my other classroom. So the setup for the ASD program was there was a lot of physical setup. It was a lot of physical, I would probably say 80% physical setup, moving bins, checking PECs, checking Velcro, checking, If are things still stuck together, is that folder too frayed to use again? So it was a lot of hands-on, very practical, physical work. Whereas with the learning strategies, it was a little bit more cerebral. There's 3 other teachers doing the grade 9 course, so we had sort of all input our kind of like dream for the course for this year. We're trying to rejig it a little bit to make it more of an orientation course for the grade 9 students, and looking at practical skills that we would like, not just learning strategies, which sometimes can be kind of abstract in some ways, but tying them to practical experiences in the school. So for example, if we're talking about self-advocacy as a pathway, then we're making sure that they can go and have real-time, power-filled conversations with important people in the school, like the librarian, the guidance counselor, the administrator. So we're kind of making it a little bit more almost like badge based. I got to be honest. Like we're looking like mini certifications that we would like the grade 9s to have, but doing it all within our classroom. So that was a little bit more cerebral, a little bit more computer work, a little bit more sort of moving digital tile pieces around. Does this piece kind of work now? Does this work here? And getting a lot of that set up in Google Classroom online, because our school is a one-to-one school. So it's interesting. I have this one-to-one. So that's one device to one student. So primarily students are all on either a dedicated laptop that they've received through their identification, through special education, or they're bringing their own laptop. And that's what 90% of the work in our school is done on digitally that way. So I have another context. So my ASD community class was hands-on, like building blocks kind of thing, real world building blocks. And then my learning strats was a little bit more virtual in design, really kind of cracking off 2 parts of my brain. So I like the you're talking about the names, because for me also, I mean, this is my 2nd year in the ASD. It's small scale, cap of 6. So I have 12 students that I have to know, 12 different students, because I have 2 different sections. Man, it's easy. It's easy to learn names when you're constantly practicing them and you have a small list to sort of pull from, and you're constantly interacting one-to-one in that context. Those names were locked like within the first 10 minutes, right? In the period 4 class, the end of the day class, I'm still, I'm calling out the attendance roster. I'm saying, you gotta correct me. If this isn't how you want your name to be heard, please correct me somehow. And you can either correct me by read out loud in class. I said, I'm fine. You correct it how you want to hear it. You can send me an email. And I taught the kids how to sort of write in phonetics, which for some kids was really helpful. So how they could sort of write their name out with the sounds, so that they shared that with me. They just sent a message through the classroom, a private message. Or I said, or if there's a different name apart from the actual main list, let me know what that is. I said, we can go by that. I need for you to be able to hear your name as you want it said in the classroom. I said, and I told them flat out, and I think it's important for all of us here to sort of be able to respect that too. So, but where I want to go with the names is I'm so competitive. Like I will look at my list, and it almost elicits giggles from the students. It happened, and I'm staring at that name, and I'll look out at the kids. I'm like, just give me a second. And I'm staring at that name, and what's going through my head is every kid that I've met whose name looks like that. So I'm running through every variation of that name that I've experienced. Aside from that, I'm also then running through and I don't have a tech term for this, but I'm not only running through the whole names, I'm also running through here's what I've learned happens with sounds when you mix these letters together. So I'm running through different versions of how like blended sounds could be. Like, what would it mean to have like an R and a B, or a B and an R? What are the different versions of that depending on the culture of origin? And then I'm also on the tail end, so I'm looking at the name, I'm kind of I'm looking up at the class and I'm sort of scanning across the kids and I'm looking at the kid and I'm looking back at the name. I'm like, okay, what are some possible variations on this? Just so I can nail that one right way. I don't do too bad. I think I do pretty good. I'm close. I'm closer, I think, by sort of running through that, but I can only imagine what it looks like to the students. Because I'm not just like reading it out flat, like one after another, after another, after another. Like I'll say no doubt on the first day, it was probably about 10 seconds, at least 10 seconds that I was just staring at the page, like between two names. And I heard just like some little, like some whispering in there. They're probably wondering like, is he okay? But I'm like time traveling, culture traveling, like traveling, different places in the world that I've been and playing with the different possibilities of how that name could be. I really like it though. I do like doing that. I like being hard on myself that way.
So what's next?
After
what does your second week look like?
So second week for me, this first week, so with the learning strategies, the second week is we're moving. So I call it unit 0. My introductions are always unit 0. So it's there's some team cohesion things. There's some I try and get them to use the tools of Google Classroom in a sort of an adjacent fashion. So it's kind of the getting to know the how of the course. So using the Google tools, using their email, can they do threaded conversations in it so they understand how to kind of communicate back and forth? Can they make a slide deck? How comfortable are they with some of so for example, when we're in conversation mode, lids are at 45 degrees tilted towards them. They have to get their phones away. Like in our school, the phones are not considered first as a device that's usable in class. It's going to be the laptop. It could be a tablet laptop, but we hold to that. So it's making sure that the students can actually use not only the digital tools that they need to facilitate their learning, but also that so it's like they have it's not only the physicality of using the tools and organizing themselves on their desks, it's also how good are they at managing their tabs? Can they do keyboard shortcuts? So it's all the kind of like the undercurrent of the operating system. That's what we started last week. We didn't get through all of it because when you start to unpack that, you realize there's a ton. Like there's actually a ton of stuff, ton of content to work through there if you're going to take the time to sort of teach them up. And we actually thought that was really important for the grade 9s because they're in a transition year. So whatever habits we had to see their habits exposed, their student skills, their learning skills exposed before we could start to say, here's where we need to kind of support you, and here's where you're ready to go. Keep going. So the ASD program, for some of the students that I had last year, their programming continues. So I'm just building new programming for them. For new students just into the program, into the class, it's really about them. It's actually kind of similar. So they're learning the how of it, where their desk is, what their visual schedule looks like, what it feels like to follow a visual schedule, what it feels like to have new support staff working with them, building trust, observing anxiety, mitigating behaviors. It's similar for the students coming into it, is that they're learning the system tools, and then they'll get to jump into the programming. Like they'll get some of the more entry level tasks that I have, and then from there, the hope is that we can build towards being up on our feet and cooking something.
Oh man, the stuff you were talking about, the digital stuff. Mm-hmm. It's funny because we kind of do the same thing. Like at the end of this week, I started the digital boot camp.
Yep.
I started here's your username and login, and some kids totally don't remember their username and their login, and some do. And I said, okay, I put them into partners, and I said, here's a device. You log in, you log out, You support your buddy as he or she logs in and logs out. And you're going to do that a few times here and there. And it's funny, they're like, what do we do after? I'm like, nothing, because you're not going to get to the after. And they're
Mm-hmm.
looking at me like, they're looking at me like, you're crazy. I'm like, no, I'm not. You're going to run into a bunch of stuff that you're going to need to troubleshoot and that you don't know how to troubleshoot. So that's what we're going to do now. Again, by November, they know how to log in, they know how to log out, and they have some idea of how to troubleshoot, regular stuff like how to change the language on your keyboard and what to do when a device decides it wants to update in the middle of you working. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about that happening in your class and kind of the mirror that it happens in mine too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's just cool. I would have not made that connection. I would have assumed that the kids at your level would have those skills already, but it sounds like they need to be refreshed often. That's kind of neat for me to think about it that way.
One of the things that we have, I'll probably start it next week, is we're also putting them through keyboarding. So one of the things that I've learned, and part of it, there used to be a really snarky conversation that would happen at high school. It probably still happens, where we would say, "Didn't you learn this at elementary?" So sort of like, and I walked away from it pretty quickly because it's really it's disrespectful on so many levels. It's also a waste of time. Let's observe what your mastery is. We're gonna go from there. We're gonna just spend time, get to know the kid. I'm gonna talk with you. I'm gonna watch what you do, and we're gonna go from there. Especially when it comes to some of the digital tool stuff. When I was doing the access program, working with the students, the students on suspension and expulsion, because the students were coming from a lot of different contexts. Like they'd be coming from, we supported several high schools, and the students would all show up. So, okay, actually, I got to back this up. Because we serviced several high schools, we had to really, really think about our list of rules and try to make up a common landing ground for all the students that arrived there. Because each school that they came from, despite the fact we were all board, the same school board, it's remarkable how different board-based rules sometimes are interpreted at the school level. And so in doing so, when it came to the digital, students were showing up and we had computers, we had desktops, and that was intentional because the desktops, we knew that we would never have a moment. The year that I was leaving, they got Chromebooks, but by having the desktops, we knew there would never be a situation where the kids said, well, I can't do my work because I don't have a computer, right? So we neutralized the equity issue by having desktops. And then they doubled down on it and got Chromebooks, which is great. But there were students showing me like, well, no, I'm just going to do it on my phone. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Now, part of it is we also had phones went into lockup. So there was two parts of that. Some of these students, they were still engaged in behaviors right up to the point that they walked into school. They were still engaged in behaviors that in all likelihood would get them resuspended. Like they were still doing stuff. So part of them not having access to their phones with us in our program was safety, security. They're not communicating out or taking pictures from inside. There's different students, and like it was just a way to have it as a non-starter, and every kid did it. It was they would go. We had a lock-up filing cabinet. The kid would put it into their own this sort of foam sleeve we had on a foam shelf inside the thing. Ziploc bag, their name. It would get locked up. They wouldn't get it back till the end of the day. We told them flat out, any phone calls that are coming in are coming through that phone on the wall. So anyway, but for some students, even when they brought their laptops, which is what was kind of ideal, my colleague and I were thinking, but we still need something to ensure that they know how to work digitally. And when I talk about the gymnastics, it's like to have an understanding of the apps that the student is familiar with, and have they been trained to use Google Docs? Have they been trained? Now, again, I haven't seen, I haven't, I when I went into Access, so that was 4 years ago when I was going in. At that time, I didn't see a lot of formal, dense training of the kids to use the Google tools. It kind of happened by way of, you kind of did it along the way. So when the task popped up, when something was going to be used, and Google Classroom, though it was used, in some cases it was being used more like a live binder. Like it's just, that's where all the resources were, but it wasn't the next level stuff. Like if you or I were taking an AQ and you're expected to sort of get those threaded responses and respond to the community, like that wasn't my experience at my school, that it was being used that way. So when I arrived there, I thought I got to make sure that these kids have a common landing space. So I put together a little curriculum to sort of train them to use their digital tools. So the basic heart of this was I wanted to strip any possibility of assumption that they knew what they were doing. I had to strip it. I had to take it out right on the front end. And I've kind of carried that with me.
Is it okay with you if I shift gears a little bit?
Do it, dude.
I want to know the first week of school and the impact or the toll that it took on your family, because I know your wife is an educator and both of your kids are in elementary school, so you're living the same life I'm living.
Yeah.
What was it like at home with having to make lunches again, the change in routine, dealing with your kids' school stuff while you're dealing with your own school stuff?
Yeah. So it's a bittersweet reality. So my spouse's school starts a week earlier. So her transition into school started 2 weeks before my start was. Am I doing that right? Yeah.
Yeah, like she went in for 1 week to prep, and then the next week school started.
And then that was my prep week to prep up. So that in itself, though it wasn't awesome, like, I mean, because then you're sort of like coming out of your summer, but we had time, I guess, sort of kind of figured out. So we had a lot of discussion about getting back into whatever routines we thought were important. When we were actually in the mix of it. So for us, the way that one of the dynamics with that is because, so in the past, when we were aligned, when we were starting the same day, just after Labor Day, she would go in for a couple days on that prep week, and then I would go in for a couple days on that prep week, and then we would negotiate what's going to happen on that Friday, who's going to watch the kids. And then we got to a point where we both got kind of busy. So then the in-laws came and watched the kids for that week. And then they would stay with us for the week. So we do use our in-laws to come and the grandparents to come and hang with the kids. And they just stay with us in the spare room. So this time around, because her prep week, I was still home. It was no biggie. And then when she was back at work, the in-laws did come. And for the 4 days, the in-laws were staying. And then on the Friday, I just took the kids in with me and brought the Switch and hooked it up to the smart board, and they just kind of relaxed and read and kind of met people. So I was able to sort of get that last day of prep done. As far as the bigger picture impact on family, I think because having both teachers in the house, maybe in our particular case, it kind of helps. The kids know what's coming. They see us starting to do things, so they start to kind of know, okay, we're moving back into the ring. There's a lot of cues that happen before the actual transition into the actual moments. So they're already sort of seeing that we're moving in and then still coming home, having dinner, having some fun, and then going back and doing work again. So I think that helped. As far as the sleep routine, I don't know. As an adult, I just kind of shifted and suffered. Karen, pretty much the same thing. The kids, we just told them 7:00 the night before school, go to your rooms. You're welcome to relax and read. my little guy, he's like, can we read together? I'm like, no, not tonight. You guys are going to do independent, just kind of relax. We'll come up, we'll do say goodnight to you two, and you'll be, you know, if you're going to lie, basically my line was, I get it. You might lie there, but you're going to lie in bed. You're just going to, if it takes you a little bit longer to fall asleep. And then school happens and they're bagged. Like, it's almost like just having to sort of do that full day. Like, it hits them pretty hard, right? They, I mean, one day this week, my little guy got up, got dressed, went to the bathroom, and then went back to bed. And I get a text. He's like, you know, he went back to bed, and I'm like, well, like, what's going on? He's like, he says his eyes hurt, and I'm like, he's probably tired. But we're not about to go into the, you know, we're not going to go into that the backup plan mode. Like, no one's staying home this week. And then by the end of the day, I think everything was fine. He was back to normal. But I had that one moment of like, I hadn't even had a chance to really set up current emergency plans. So
I was living on the edge. Sorry, the emergency plans. I just made my emergency plans yesterday.
yeah.
So, you know, for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I was living on the edge. Now, most teachers probably laugh at me about that, but literally yesterday was my double planning day. So I have my regular planning time, and then I have my additional planning time one day a week, and Friday's my day. And I literally sat there and I said to myself, I am not leaving this computer until I get my emergency plans done. And I did. But it took me 80 minutes. It took me 2 planning times. And that was stressing me out. It was stressing me out because what happens if one of the kids got sick?
Yeah.
Right? Which you and I both you know, have prepared for that, and it still kills me. Like every time one of them's sick, it kills me.
Yep. It is. It's funny to think of, and part of it is like, it's almost, there really isn't the perfect way to get ready. Like, every year I try and find more efficiencies. I haven't yet though. Like, I haven't found the perfect number of efficiencies that let me feel totally calm that I've got that first week rolling. And I don't know. I would love to, and not that I would ever not judge or snark at, but I would love to chat with someone that really does have it going on. My one colleague, who's been an amazing mentor, I'll say, even she's like ninja in the community classroom. And there were so many times that, you know, I go around to her classroom and I come in the door and she's just like this. So the door's right here. So I come in and I can look down. I can see around the corner here, and she's just like this. And I look at her desk and I'm like, man. Now she's kind of the default coordinator for our autism program. Mm-hmm. So she's dealing with transportation, and she's dealing with parent communication and interdisciplinary team coming in. She's kind of coordinating field trips. So she's getting all this, right? But yeah, a couple times I walk in and she's just leaning over her desk, like beat down.
I laugh because I can relate.
Yeah.
I can relate. My desk, so my desk faces like the windows and the doors to my back. And I wonder how many times as the doors open and people are passing by at lunch, where I'm sitting there and my head's down, or I'm just like, I'm out of it. But sometimes you need that.
You definitely do. You definitely do. I think part of it too, I will say, There is an element of that feeling like you're just rocked. Here's how it's purposeful for me. Is I think it's the necessary litmus to humility. For me, that's what it is. That no matter what I do, it's what makes this job, gives it kind of big purpose, I guess. It's what keeps me curious about it, is that, when I can really settle into, um, I'm never going to get this right. Not that I'm not trying to, but I'm just never going to get it right. And to kind of go, and in doing so, I don't find that, it doesn't sort of crush me. It just gives me actually a little bit of space. I feel like I have some breathing space in there, right?
Well, wouldn't you say that's the art to the profession? Like there's the science and there's the art.
Well, I think it's both, to be honest. Like, I think because if we're saying if it's the thinking and the doing, right? If there's some sort of mixture between the two, I just acknowledge that there's no end to the doing and there's no end to the thinking about how I'm going to do it. And there's no end to the possibility that no matter what I think and no matter what I do, someone else is going to have a different version of it. You could call that art, or it just might be being really present in your practice. I don't know. Like the art part, maybe, because part of what I do believe is that you can do teaching and not be creative, and you don't have to be artistic at all if you kind of just accept that you have to learn and you have to grow and you have to keep working and you got to, like, the grind. Like if you accept the grind, then you can kind of let go of the art of teaching a little bit. Like if you want to get really good at the grind, like you can actually, some people may actually interpret that as you've discovered the art of it, but it might just be that you're just really good at the details. It's not necessarily about the creativity. A good example again is my colleague. She wouldn't call herself creative. She's just really, really good at keeping it all on the table. And me walking in and her having those humble moments, well, I think that's the cost. We all have those, but that's the cost. So
Chris.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of our time this week. I know. Stephen Hurley, it's going to ruin his walk. We're messing with his timelines. But, I just took a big breath. Anyway, okay. So, do you have any homework for this week?
No.
No, that's okay. Homework. Oh my goodness, both of my kids had a little bit of homework.
Yeah.
And the big one doesn't care much for it. The little one wants to get it all done because that's what he was told to do. He's compliance 100%. And the other night he had a hockey tryout, and his hockey tryout was 2 hours long. So by the time I got home from work, I made him something to eat, and then I threw him in the car and we went to hockey. And by the time we got home from hockey, he needed to shower and go to bed. So needless to say, there was no time for homework. It was extracurricular night. So, I'm putting him to bed and I tell him, buddy, when I'm done putting you to bed, I'm going to go down, write a note in your agenda, letting your teacher know that we couldn't do your homework. And he's looking at me like, are you kidding me? I'm like, well, you got home from school, you had a snack, and you waited for your mom to get home, and then I came home 10 minutes later. Like, did you try to do it? He's like, no, I came home and wanted to rest. I'm like, exactly. So it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. But the look on his face was just like, what? I didn't do my homework. And then the big one, he's like, what do you mean I have to sit down and do such and such? It's like, oh, this is a cool shot. Watching you take the picture of the picture, really cool. You're gonna have to watch this.
You've never had a chance to see.
I've never seen this. Before we shut it down, I have to tell you that I've really enjoyed your camera view today, your camera perspective. So basically, what Chris has done for the people that aren't watching and just listening, he's moved his camera to like a bird's eye view of his workstation. And so we were able to watch him draw his sketch note for the day, for the podcast. And he was just taking a picture of it. It was really cool to watch him take a picture of the picture. It's a good one. It's a good one for having finished the first week of school.
Yeah, you saw that?
I see it. It's great.
Oh yeah, that's right. You can.
I can see it.
How's that? Does it? Because it's such a little view on my thing. Like when you see the big, you can actually see the text and everything on there.
I see it says, hello, my name is, and then I can't really read the stuff underneath there. But that's
Really,
just,
really, really important to me.
well, that's what it says.
Yeah, really,
Hello.
really.
Hello, my name is really, really, really important to me.
Yeah.
Man, that's cool. Like, I'd love to put that up in my classroom. I think
Make the poster, yo. Take it.
I think the people at my school would appreciate that.
Yeah, go ahead, take it.
Thanks, brother.
Yep. Thanks for the combo. Thanks for the on-ramp. I appreciated that. I
Same
appreciated
here.
that a lot. And yeah, I'll connect with you sometime this week. Okay, man.
Right on. Sounds good. Have a good one.
Take care.
Oh, I don't turn this off. You do.
I know. I was about to go safe hands. We're good.